Hi everybody, it's Franny and we're back with the 3.2 Carrera. In the last episode we got the engine in, but only just. And the weather went crazy and the whole thing went nuts towards the end. So if you haven't seen that episode, go ahead and watch that. It's pretty nutty. At any rate, the engine is in, but it's just bolted in. So today what I want to do is go through and hook up all the hoses and all the wiring and all the connections and such. There's kind of a lot of little bits. Obviously our air conditioner is still sitting out here. Got a lot of extra work here to do. All right, well I'm going to get started with the inside the engine bay bits in here first, and then we'll move underneath the car and get to all the connections and stuff under there. I'm going to start in the forward corner here and get to work on stuff up there. No particular order to this really, just that I don't want to do stuff here in the back that then I have to reach over. Well, let's see. So we've got a couple of things we have to hook up. This is a return fuel line here, another fuel line. This is the brake booster vacuum line, and we have a wiring harness that actually goes that away. This is for our oxygen sensor. Why don't we get to those fuel lines first? And start with this one, which is the return line. Our return line here goes down to this connection here. It's going to have to go under that because this guy's got to go up here like that. Go ahead and get a wrench on these and tighten them up. We can hold this guy here. There we go. Now this is only about 9 foot-pounds, so it's not super duper tight. There we go. I think that's going to do. All right, well we'll get to this brake booster line. I replaced the clamp on here because the old one wasn't really that great, so I put a new one on. I'm going to put a small dab of silicone paste on this. I think it's just going to make our life a little bit easier to get this on. So around here, I just don't want to put too much force on these plastic parts. All right, that should help us get on. Oh yeah, look at that. That's much easier. Just a little bit more to go. There it goes, all the way seated. We can tighten this guy down. Okay, and that's our brake booster line. Next, I think I want to install our fuel line. This is our pressure line in from the pump. It connects to the top of the filter up here. All right, it just connects up here to the top of our fuel filter. Now I've replaced the fuel filter and put a date of 10/20/20 on it. It was already November, but close enough. All right, we just take that cap off the top there. To tighten these guys up, it's a 19 and a 19, so we'll be holding it with our 19 here. Once again, not super duper tight. Let's take a look at some of our wiring here. Remember our sensors. Well, I've got little pieces of tape on here, DG and BG. So we've got BG on the bottom and DG on the top. This one still has its factory marking on it that says BG. And that's the one with 3. So we know that one goes here. BG, BG, great. Snap that guy into place. That means this one must go here. There we go. And then the top one is our temperature sensor, and it's different. It just has 2 connections on it. So there we go. If you end up swapping these two here, these 2 black connectors, the car just will not run. So if you're starting your car for the first time and it just will not go, double check your connections here and make sure that they're not swapped. Let's go ahead and hook up our grounds here. We've got 2 of them. They go to the same spot. So they both go here. Well, these don't look too bad, but I'm going to just hit them really quick. A little bit of wire brush action, just sort of clean them up a little bit. I'm going to just cinch that down. All right, well, what about our oxygen sensor? Yes, this goes back here. Just simply line these guys up. All right, just make sure the plug's all the way seated and put it back in its little harness back here. There we go. And then from our engine here, we have our big plug here that plugs into this module over here. Let's wire up out of the way a little bit. It sort of slides in like that. Just going to line everybody up and push it in. All right, that looks good. So our coil wire is here. So we'll sort of pull the top off of this guy. Coil wire needs to go on the top here. We'll make sure it seats all the way. Okay, I think that's pretty good. We can put our little covery guy back on. Sort of. There we go. Sits down like that. The other wire goes up there, and then there's a little snap for this. Hold it all together. There we go. All right, and that's our coil on. We have a cover that goes over this. So here's our cover here that goes over this bit. Work this guy on. There's two little thumb screws here. I'll go ahead and pull those off. One up here. Move this into position here. It also captures here on this rubber grommet on our wiring harnessy guy here. It's good. Okay. Continuing on around here, we have our wiring harness for the whole Motronic fuel injection system here for the intake and such. All right, so it has to get routed through a hole over here actually, come up on this side and plug into the various places where we need to attach here and under here and under here. 4 of these connections, I believe. Let me go ahead and pull this through. Well, it comes through here. It's a little bit tough to get your hand through there. Okay, all right, well, pull these through. There we go. I've got a bit of slack here too, so I can pull this out. I stuck on something. There we go. Let's get our clips on first. The very first one is this big one with 4 connectors on it. That one's gonna plug in right here. All right, and then we have another little bitty one with just 2. And that one's gonna go here. See, it plugs on here like that. Okay. We have this one, which goes all the way around and plugs in over here, I believe. There we go. And then that leaves this one, which plugs down here. Okay, and there we go. That's all connected. Snap our little blue snap in. There. Okay. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, back here, this is our connection for our fuel injectors. And that just pops on here like that, and that's that. We've got all our wires and hoses sorted here on the left-hand side. Next, what I want to do is install this helper blower. It's a blower for the heating system. Lives on the top here on the left-hand side on the intake manifold. All right, let's go ahead and get this guy in. I believe this goes over the top of the bracket. Pull that off. This guy on, put that back on. There we go. Put this on. And the third one is a little by braille in the back left there. All right. Now we also have an electrical connection here that goes up to the motor, so I'm going to go ahead and plug that in. Yes, like that. There we go. Let's tighten these guys down. Okay, that's that. Next, we have this big piece of conduit here. It has 4 connections, 2 here, 1 here, and then 1 down on the bottom. So you want to make sure you get all 4 of them connected. This is pretty important to have in because the air from the fan here is going to be blowing into the shroud, and there's this huge hole here on the side of the shroud. So the engine will never cool itself if this piece is out. So kind of important. And they're different types of bolts. These are more like a, sort of like a screw. More like a metal machine screw. So they're a little weird. These 2 on this side. Then one of them is way down here. I'm going to get that one out as well. This one's going to be very interesting to get back on. In fact, the distributor is very much in the way. I'm going to pull that out. I'm just going to pull this out as well. Careful not to lose the screws. Get this out of the way. We can see our screw that's down here. This is it down here that we have to get off. There we go. With all the screws out, we start to fit this piece. It's a little fiddly getting this thing in. It has to fit into this rubber gasket. There we go. And, oh, in fact, I've got to be on the other side of the oil line. There we go. Yeah, this is a thing. Okay, there we go. That feels better. As you can see, now the two connections back here are completely occluded by this piece. So this is just a kind of a bear to get in and out. And this one down here, which was going to be the most difficult, now that we have distributor cap off, I think we can get to that pretty easily. Get that started. Okay. Now another screw goes in here on the side. It actually screws into the side of the fan shroud here. And that looks like this guy here. All right, well that's those two. Now we have to get our two in the back here, and they are pretty much by braille. It's a little bit difficult to get back there, but there we go. Spinny, spinny, spinny. Now the next one is actually quite a bit more difficult because it's a little bit lower and very difficult to get to. Where are you? Right down here. So it's quite a bit lower. It's basically right here-ish, back here. All right, we can tighten this down. Okay, that's that one. This one that's here, we can get to that one. Okay, that's that one. And then these two back here. The one that's down on the bottom isn't too awfully difficult to get to. Thought it was going to be, but it's not too bad. You can kind of see our gold nut there that we need to lock down. All right, there we go. And the fourth one is the top one back here, which is a little hard to get to. I think the best way to get to that one is with just a wrench instead. All right, you don't want to wail on them, just needs to be in there. At this point, we can put our distributor cap back on. Things are always a little fussy. Okay, there's one. Make sure it's still in place there. It is. There we go. Grab hold of it, make sure it's on there. Next, we need to install this sort of S-shaped tube here. The square bit goes back on the blower, and the other end goes to our tube that goes down into the heat exchangers. Now this thing is a little bit difficult to get in as well. Try getting this end in first, and then we'll work it in the other side. All right, that looks seated there. We can work it on back here. There we go. Our little 8mm screw that goes here. Now, technically, there's another screw just like this on the back side here, and it really should be there, but it's missing. Somebody probably pulled it off back in the day and it fell off or something. But, you know, it seems to hold on just fine with one, and getting to that one in the back would be such a pain. And anytime you do spark plugs and anything you're working on the left side of the engine, it's a lot easier to pull this guy out. So I'm just going to leave it with one there for now. We can tighten up our clamps up here and also down here as well. So let's do this one down here first. Weirdly difficult to get to. Okay, that feels pretty good, pretty tight. And now finally our two straps up here at the top. Once again, just make sure they're sitting in their little slots where they're supposed to be. Okay. Well, we have everything on the left side of the engine all taken care of. We're just going to move over to the right. We don't have much to do, just a few tubes to hook up, so not a big deal. So let's go ahead and get them done. We have two large hoses that need to go on and a smaller one here. And then this teeny little guy, and it goes in the top of this little servo up here. So let's put that one on first and get it up and out of the way. All right, good. That's that one. That was easy. Next, I think I'm going to do this smaller one. It goes up here on that servo as well. We don't want to forget to put our clamp on. So there's our clamp. Hook that guy on. There we go. All right, there we go. See that little blue towel? That's where our bottom one's gonna go. So let's hook up our bottom one first. So I'm gonna go over the top of the AC line here. Now I replaced both of these tubes. This one is a breather actually, comes off the top of the breather I believe, one of these does, I think it's this one. And they can chuck up a decent amount of oil back into these two connections here, going into the oil tank. This is a dry sump, so going back into the oil tank itself. And if they have any types of breaks or splits in them anywhere, you'll get a massive oil leak in your car. Okay, get you all the way in. Now our next one is right behind. You can kind of see the blue towel here. There we go, take our little plug out. Now, something to look at, do you see inside there, there's a little copper piece in here, this little guy. That needs to be in there, so if you're missing that, you want to get that part. Now, I'm thinking this one's going to be easiest to get to. Probably like this would be my guess. There we go. That's on all the way. Good. Tight quarters in here. All right, that feels good. All right. And for oil filters, instead of putting oil around the rubber gasket, I like to put a little bit of silicone grease on there, just a kiss. I think it makes the filter come off a lot easier. And always just hand tight. There we go. Well, I lost the light, so we're back on a new day here. It's a little cooler out today. All right, where we left off was we got everything done on the left side of the car, everything connected. Looks pretty good over there. On the right, I wanted to get started with our air conditioning compressor over here, but I kind of forgot. I was thinking about this. I forgot to put in the air filter. Kind of important. So let's do that first because it's in the back and much easier to get to if we're not trying to get over this air conditioning compressor. So, all right, let's just real quick like Buddy, put in the new air filter. Now this is kind of weird. This air filter looks like it's basically square, right? Well, if you look all the way around the edge on this thing, right on this corner here is a little arrow. So you're like, huh, that's interesting. Then looking around on our airbox cover, one of these tabs has a little arrow on it. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a little arrow on this one tab here. So just line up the arrow with the arrow and it should all fit. So lining up our arrow with our arrow, it should just sort of drop in theory. There we go. There we go. And just make sure it's seated all the way around. There we go. All seated, ready to go. Also, if you're kind of a little confused on how this thing goes in, there's a little bit of writing here that says direction of paper pleats is crossways this way, so which is what we've got. Our pleats going crossways, so that's good. All right. All right, there we go. Let me just kind of raise this guy up to where it needs to go. Up there, okay. Reaching behind here, this is all the braille method, making sure our clips are all the way back. And get the bottom one on, it's a little easier to get to. There we go, that one's pretty easy. And the top one, a little bit more difficult to get to. There it goes, snap. So this is what we're kind of looking at here. This tab, which is actually part of the cover, goes here underneath that notch. Same thing on the bottom. And the way these clips work is this bit here actually just goes underneath the lip and then you just pull them tight and boom, they snap. Top and bottom. And there we go. There's our air cleaner back in and our air filter box back in. Next, I want to get to this air conditioner compressor. This thing sits on this big old pedestal over here, and it's actually 2 bits to the mount. This part actually slides back and forth, and the compressor mounts to this thing positively or firmly. And then this base slides back and forth on top of this pedestal. So we got a couple of things to install. Pretty much our pedestal goes on like that. So they can slide back and forth. Now, weirdly, the washers for these bolts, for the pedestal itself, are super duper thick. I'm not sure exactly why, but they're big, huge, honking washers. So if you put all your parts through and sent them off to get them plated, and you get these washers back, and you're like, what could those possibly go to? Weirdly, it's the slider mount here for the air conditioner compressor. It's kind of weird. All right, so we're just going to put these on. And another kind of strange thing is that there are 3 bolts and a nut. So we've got a stud sticking up and then 3 bolts. Okay, last one goes back here. Okay, and our stud here also has a very thick washer. Okay, now this has to be able to move back and forth. That's how we adjust the tension on the belt. And speaking of that, there's another bolt we need to put on here, and that's this guy. Turn that in a bit, this guy in. All right, so it screws on the end here, and it is the actual tension adjuster for the belt. Just sort of cinch it up until it contacts. You can see as we tighten that, we can see the whole plate moving, and if our air conditioning compressor is on that, it's going to be moving this way, and it will tighten our belt. I'm going to leave all these loose for now so we can adjust it. Next, we're going to fit our air conditioning compressor. I'm going to make sure your hoses go where they're supposed to go. There we go, kind of down there. There we go. Push those guys back a bit. Very long studs here, go all the way down. And for our air conditioning compressor, we only have 3 bolts, because the 4th one would have sat on top of one of the adjustments on the carrier, so I suppose that's why they only have 3. Make sure you put these guys in a few turns, at least by hand if you can, just because with the force of these hoses and things, it can kind of make it difficult to get this aligned. All right, now these guys we can run down. Okay, that's good and tight. At this step, we want to work our fan belt in. So we have to work it down. It goes on the outer pulley. Okay, great. It's on there, and we'll just fit it over the pulley here. Make sure your adjustment's all the way in. Give you the most room possible. Boom, popped over. It's good and loose still. This is our adjustment bolt here, and we just sort of run it in a bit. We'll tighten up our belt. I'm going to do it by hand, really. Now, I always set fan belts a little bit on the loose side, and a lot of people will write in and say, your fan belt's too loose. And it may be a tad loose, but I'm going by John Murr's book, and he always said, too loose, no juice, too tight, no bearings. If you hear your air conditioning belt squeaking and squealing and making a big old fuss, either replace the belt because it's probably bad at this point. But yes, it might be a little bit loose. But I think it's just much better to have a little bit looser belt, and we don't wear out the bearings on whatever we're spinning, whether it be the alternator on the fan here, or the air conditioning, or your water pump if you have a car with a water pump, any of those sorts of things. If the belts are just too tight, then it just destroys the bearings. So this feels pretty good to me. We can run our stopper nut in. All right, and just cinch this guy down. It just keeps the adjustment from moving. It's just a lock nut. All right, great. With our air conditioning compressor where it needs to be, we go ahead and lock down the 4 bolts here that are holding on the carrier. All right, that feels tight. All right, and that's our air conditioner compressor back in. And with that, we're pretty much done. Well, this episode's getting a little long in the tooth, so I'm gonna cut it off here. We still have quite a bit more to do under the car. We've got hoses to hook up, our clutch, a bunch of other things as well. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that now. Hit the little bell next to it to get notified, because you're not gonna wanna miss any of the content on this car. This is pretty awesome. All right, well, thank you so much for watching, and as always, a super special thank you to our Patreon supporters. Okay, well, until next time, safe travels. Bye.